So we have got a huge set of audience right now, and we also have got our panelists in place. So thank you, audience, for coming to this panel discussion despite the very short notice. And the emerging Telangana and way forward for the innovation ecosystem is the topic that we are looking to cover today. I am Manish Jaiswal, as I'm working for Telangana State Innovation Cell, and as part of TSIC, I lead the innovation office. And I'm very excited to hear the thoughts of the panelists on the topic of emerging Telangana way forward for the innovation ecosystem. During the COVID times, we have suddenly seen the Telangana innovation ecosystem come out alive. There have been more and more talks about it. Some of us are thinking that where is this all of a sudden coming from? And all that, but it has been a gradual work. It has happened over a lot of it has happened after a lot of efforts and over a long period of time, and it's not sudden. T-Hub was always a household name, but now we hear Rich, we hear TAS, and especially during COVID times. So we just wanted to give the audience a platform to hear the people who are behind the scenes running the show, the leadership that's driving the change, and let's hear about from them as to what they feel about the Telangana's innovation ecosystem, where is it headed, where it has come from, and questions like that. So I'll just go ahead and tell you the flow of the panel discussion. So first we will go around the panel and request the panelists to talk about their organizations and their
audio
and then I request the panelists to come in with their questions. So that's how we are going to do it. I would like to request Ravi Narayan, who is the CEO of T-Hub and also the Chief Innovation Officer of Telangana State Innovation Cell, to start with the presentation about the T-Hub and of course the innovation ecosystem. Ravi has been co-founder of 3 companies himself, all successful, led from the inception till the acquisition. He has been advising several governments, including the government of Karnataka and countries like Singapore and Malaysia. During his time in Bangalore, Ravi was the chair of the Thai Entrepreneurial Summit and the NASSCOM Product Conclave. Over to you, Ravi, for the introductions.
Great. Thank you, Manish. Thank you very much for the introduction and also the introduction of the topic itself. I think this is a very momentous day for us.
Hi.
Because for the very first...
Hello.
Sujay, can you put yourself on mute?
I have muted Ravi.
Yeah, you muted him. Okay. Yeah, so it's a very momentous day because for the very first time in the Telangana innovation ecosystem, we are getting all the players here on onto this webinar. We have Hello. 2 players remaining, which we don't have on the panel today, which is the V-Hub.
Can you see the audio tab on the console? You can see, right? There are many audience view, sharing, webcam.
Sandhya, can you mute yourself? You done that, Manish? Okay. So yeah, so we have probably another discussion webinar where we will go through those 2 organizations as well. So this is not the full complement; it is large complement of the Telangana innovation ecosystem. There'll be more discussions. The other thing that I'm a little I want to caution you is that each one of these organizations have done so much that it may or may not be possible for us to do justice to the kind of work that has been accomplished here in Telangana. But we nevertheless will tickle your interests today, get you thinking about the possibilities that we have brought to us, and therefore get the conversation started, because each one of us has so much to offer, each one of you, and opportunities to collaborate and do much more than what we've done. I also want to take this opportunity to really talk about the announcement that we had yesterday. For the very first time in our history in Hyderabad, in Telangana, the innovation ecosystem of Hyderabad was placed at 71 in the global ecosystem ranking. Now, does it do justice to the work we are doing? I don't think so, but it's a start. Now we're beginning to understand what does it take to make this thing happen. But I think we are at a very, very commendable place in terms of what we have accomplished as an innovation ecosystem together. And at the same time, we have the ability to do so much more just because we are all working on it together as well. The other thing that also got noted yesterday in this startup genome report was the fact that we are among the top global 30 in terms of affordable talent. And I think that's a huge impetus for a lot of startups, a lot of corporations to actually start working out of Hyderabad, because not only is this an innovation capital, but it also is a talent capital for several of you who are looking to do stuff here in Hyderabad and Telangana. So let me start with the presentation. So as you see on the top right, we see the name of the organizations, most of whom we will be hearing from today, except for VHub and the emerging technologies, which we'll hear from later. But again, if you take a look at how a lot of people talk about innovators, they talk about entrepreneurs and so on and so forth. Usually it is done unidimensionally. It is about startups, it's about innovators. It's not about how we have created an innovation ecosystem where everybody is benefiting from the innovation that's happening. So this was a representation of what we wanted to what we wanted to accomplish as an inclusive innovation ecosystem. So if you start from the very top, there is what we call the global capability centers, which is basically the back end of large MNCs that are located in Hyderabad. More than 120 of them, more than 20 of them actually work with startups or innovations already, which is a huge number, by the way, by global standards. Now, if that is not surprising, Indian corporates themselves are working with startups. There are more than 80 Indian corporates. I mean, I'm talking about those that are, 1,000 crore and above. More than 15 of them are working. So this, a higher percentage of people are actually working with startups, which is commendable, given that Indian corporates are always told that you guys are slow in adoption of innovation and so on. When we started this whole process of building this innovation infrastructure, once the state was formed, through KTR Garu's vision, we started with probably about 400 startups. Now we are more than 2,000 startups already, and this is in the tech space. Imagine non-tech, you would have a lot more. All the premier institutions are working with startups one way or the other, innovators one way or the other. We have a large number of Atal tinkering labs here in the state. We have Atal incubation centers in the state. We have more than 40 research labs. Number is 25, but 40 research labs. More than a quarter of them work with startups. And the most exciting thing for me is what the government is doing. It's one thing to create some fantastic policies and so on and so forth, but it's another to actually also become a procurer of innovation from these startups. So they have begun the culture of adopting the products and services from the startups as well. So that's, I think, a very exciting set of accomplishments already, and we have just begun the journey, in a much more concerted way. And this is a list of all the organizations that are working in the Telangana Innovation Network today. You are missing VHub, which is the third here, and Emerging Technologies, which is the last one, and you will hear from them in a subsequent webinar. Okay, if you can move to the next slide, please. So let me give you a little bit about T-Hub. T-Hub, I think because of the work we do and the press that we get and the social media and so on and so forth, you get to see bits and pieces of what we do. So I just wanted to see if I can put it all together in one place so that you get a much more of a holistic picture of what is it that we do. So the first thing that we do is what we call a startup innovation. So the whole idea is we don't want to compete with those incubators that are across the city. There are close to 40, 45 of them across the city, and in rest of Telangana, maybe another 10, 15 of them. We don't want to compete with them. We want to give a way for those startups that have been nurtured by these incubators already, a way to continue their journey here in Telangana. So we begin the engagement with these startups in our incubation programs when there are about 50 lakhs ARR, and then from that we continue to help them grow. They go to a Series A, which is the acceleration programs, and then it goes on to scaling. So whole idea of the scaling program is Series A, Series B, is that we don't want to have these people relocate away from Hyderabad after all the work that has happened with them, that they continue to get the kind of help, mentoring, investments that they need to continue to headquarter themselves in Hyderabad, but still be able to operate anywhere in the world. So we have created that full stack of services for startups, all the way from the time that they have a product market fit to be there till they exit, get a, or they get sold or IPO or whatever. Next one, please. The interesting thing that we are also doing as part of the ecosystem building is creating the demand for these startups. It's one thing to do a wonderful job of creating very, very good startups, do the mentoring, provide them access to technology, access to investors, but really you get to a certain point where they say, okay, this is all good, but I need customers. And if the customers are not here in Hyderabad, not here in Telangana, then I think it's going to be very difficult for us to help them grow and help them stay here in this state. So we do a lot of work in terms of corporate innovation. We work with these things, as you saw, the GCCs and the Indian corporates. So we will do the same phased approach of starting with them very early and help them. So that is the emerging set of programs. Then we take them to coordinated, which is where you are building POCs along with these corporate partners. Then transformative is you're actually being dovetailed into building products with them, and then disruptive is where they acquire, fund startups, and so on and so forth. And the third thing that we do at T-Hub is an ecosystem innovation office, which is ecosystem innovation, where we actually have created a central pool of mentors, central pool of investors, central pool of service providers. When I say service providers, it's like lawyers, accountants, which is non-digital, but the digital would be cloud providers like Amazon, Microsoft, from whom you get cloud credits, or you have GIS material coming from some other people. So these are the kinds of things. So anything that is pertaining to not just T-Hub, but much larger implication, all of that gets put into the ecosystem office. International program is where we are looking at T-Hub being the gateway for a lot of the startups that have global aspirations to come to us and then reach the markets outside of India. So we are connected with European markets, with US markets, and so on and so forth. All that is handled through the international program, and vice versa too. A lot of startups that are outside of India are looking at India as a market, because we are about $3 trillion of GDP and market, and they wanted to actually be part of this. And we also have a digitally savvy population. We have the India stack and the Aadhaar and so on and so forth. So we have the ability to really attract some great startups to India. So we become the gateway to India, if you will, as T-Hub, to bring them into India. So one of the recent programs that we launched is with the South Korean government, and we're bringing in some great South Korean startups to India through T-Hub. Community and events is basically to get more and more people excited about taking on the innovation journey. So next slide, please. So I won't take too much time here, but we started out as a building with a whole bunch of startups that got some great space, world-class space at very, very affordable price, to actually now working with them in a much more concerted way to provide very specific programs around the innovation, startup innovation that I talked about, and also began our experiments on the corporate innovation side. And where we are today is that all of them have been institutionalized. Each of them is, creating a huge impact. And when we thought we had all figured out, we were hit by COVID. And now, just like any good startup would do, we have pivoted and we have become much more inclusive, much more digital, and much more global than ever before. So it's a huge opportunity that has opened up in front of us. So talking about COVID, we have seen that a lot of startups, I think a third of startups will really have a difficult time continuing to be alive for beyond the next 2 months, which is very unfortunate because this is a huge amount of investment that has gone into them. But there are about 20% of them that are actually beginning to see some fantastic opportunities opening up in front of them. Why? Because it's just the markets have reclustered in a very, very different way, and it's all happening so quickly that not large the large corporations cannot respond to them fast enough. So the startups have to come into their aid to make this thing happen. So the relevancy of the startups have become much higher. So these 20% of startups are really thriving. And then there are about these 45% plus that are kind of somewhere in the middle. So they are deciding whether they should use this opportunity to really grow very, very fast, or they should, just take the exit route. So we are spending a lot of time on the mentoring. We are spending a lot of time through webinars and so on and so forth to really help them, get through all these, the crises, and be really relevant in the new normal as it emerges. Next slide, please. We can skip this. So I just talked to you about the T-Hub journey, and there's a lot more to it. Please come to our website, and if you have specific questions that you would like me to answer on T-Hub, I can do that separately. But let me just quickly, in the interest of time, talk to you about TSIC. TSIC, I think, is probably the only initiative that I don't see a very clear, equivalent in other states. I mean, there are certain things that are happening there, but not to the extent. So it's clearly an organization that is about creating the innovation culture. It is about going beyond the startup that T-Hub was so focused about. It is about going into a lot of the activities that are happening in the state of Telangana, into the hinterlands, into the rural, into helping rural innovators, grassroots innovators, and so on and so forth. So it's a very unique organization that has been created by the minister and the principal secretary. So we have gone through the first phase of it. In TSIC 1.0, we worked with what you see here is the execution of strategy. Under that, you see that we were working very closely with grassroots innovation, innovation in the school, innovation in government, and also startup innovation. These were early programs we ran for the first 2 years. We had a fantastic run. We learned a lot of things. A lot of the programs went well. Some of the programs did not go well. But then we came to a point in our lives now where we figured out that we can actually take some of the ones that worked well and make them institutional, programatize them and really help them scale. So that is the reason why you see a much broader set of things that we are doing today. The innovation office, as Manish introduced to you earlier, is the place where we're going to work very closely on a concerted basis to create a lot of data repositories to make sure that we are able to not only assess for ourselves, but also participate in several rankings that happen, like startup ranking, innovation index and so on and so forth. So a lot of that discussion happens there. Through the data, we are looking to formulate strategies and policies and so on and so forth. So a lot of that work resides in the innovation office. Execution of strategy is where we continue to grow the programs that I already mentioned to you about, and I'll tell you a little bit more about it later. And then what we also found was, after we had done some wonderful work with these startups in the early days, there was no clear path forward as to what is the way we help them scale. Just like I mentioned to you about mentoring and investments and all that, there was no clear path for those innovators that are doing some wonderful work in our in the tier 2 cities, tier 3 cities. How do you really take them forward? How do you create them into MSMEs if possible? How do you really give them that path? And that's what this third initiative called sustainability and scalability is going to do. uh, the fourth one is about driving visibility, as in we have taken a lot of the individual innovators, talked about them in the larger media, created role models within the communities that they live in, so that they get inspired. Other people in the village, in the district, get inspired by them and all that. But so now, in addition to all the work that we have done in that, it's now about innovation diffusion, positive deviance, where we are actually celebrating somebody's work and using specific learnings from them, so that we can actually get the other innovators who are now inspired by the thing to actually start their journey as well. So that innovation diffusion set of activities will actually bring more and more innovators into the mainstream. So these are the various things that the next avatar of TSIC envisions. Next slide, please. Some of the great, the impact that we've had. If you just can go back to the previous slide. So if you look at the bottom line, we have impacted more than 4,000 students, 200 teachers, through our whole innovation for the student community set of initiatives. If you look at the second mandate, which we have had, was to promote the culture of innovation. We have, sourced and celebrated the work of more than 100 innovators. 120 innovators have been now started the journey on the sustainability and scalability part. We are looking to help them with the financial assistance. We have done some initial work, but it's not an institution yet, which we are going to do in the second avatar of TSIC. And then working with the government, we all work with every single district here in Telangana, with the district collectors and their organizations. And the question is, how do we take this thing and build it out further? So if you go to the next slide, please. Next slide. So what you see here are there are about 17 initiatives that we have put under 4 buckets. We have a bucket of direct service, which is where we at CSIC will go run this program, make it happen. But we feel that this is not something that is sustainable. So we need to start empowering and enabling other people to start doing this. So this is where we bring in partners who take it on and start doing some of this work on their own. So when we say scaled direct service, we are doing this alongside with some partners. And then even better for us is that the system adopts it. It's not just our partners who are doing it. It's happening more at a grassroots level, as in the villages are beginning to do this, or at the district level, the district collector takes this on and makes it part of his or her cadence. That would be really system change for us, and ultimately the entire framework changes, and all that. So the good news is we have been continuing to push things to the right. So of the 17 initiatives that have worked well for us in TSIC 1.0, 9 of them actually have started moving to the right, which is a testimony to the fact that we are bringing something that is relevant, that is applicable, and therefore is being embraced by the state, embraced by the citizens of the state, and then they are taking this thing on and making those changes. So this is kind of a quick synopsis of what we do at TSIC. So I guess we'll take all the questions later, right?
Yeah, Ravi.
Okay, so great. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ravi. Yeah, thank you so much, Ravi, for the introduction that you have given for the T-Hub as well as the TSIC. I would now request Professor Ajit Rangnekar to talk about the RICH. Professor Ajit Rangnekar is the Director General of the Research and Innovation Circle of Hyderabad, known as RICH. He has served as the Deputy Dean and the Dean of the Indian School of Business for 12 years. He's also a partner at the Social Venture Partners, the largest network of engaged business leaders, philanthropists in the world. So very keen to hear, Professor Rangnekar, from you about the wonderful work that Rich is doing.
Thank you, Manish. Thank you. So, when we talk of ecosystem, we must realize that in Hyderabad, this is something very, very young. On the second day of taking office, Minister K.T. Ramarao Garu, Srini Kolipara, and PJ Narayan walked into my office at ISB. That too, it was the morning of the second day. And that is when we talked about making Hyderabad and Telangana as an innovation ecosystem, and so started talking about what is this ecosystem. So we are talking about something that is about 6 years old, maybe less than 6 years old. Prior to that, ISB and TAI had been doing a lot to make that happen, and especially people like J. Chaudhary, Satish Chandra, Dr. Ramesh Bhairapaneni, and others had worked with us. But it was only when the state took a major part that this whole ecosystem has been developing. So when we look at our ranking and things like that, we must understand that compared to any other city, we are a baby. Others have been in this business for 20, 30, 40 years. We are in many ways a young city. Even our great institutions, Triple IT is just about 20 years. ISB is not even 20 years. Nalsar is about the same. This thing, IIT Hyderabad is about less than 10 years. So we are creating an ecosystem of truly young. And in that whole thing, when we were doing it, we realized that there were 41 national research institutions in this city alone. There were almost 20 great academic institutions. There were great industries in food and seeds, in pharmaceuticals and life sciences, in defense and aerospace, and in a whole lot of, but none of them were talking to each other. So things were happening independent of each other. So that's when we said, let us bring everyone together, and we focused on three: aerospace, defense, and sustainability, life sciences and food, life sciences and health, and food and agriculture. And we said we'll focus on those three, partly because in those three we have both industry and research capability. So if you go to the next one, that is what RICH focuses on. Could you take me to the next slide, Manish? Right. So in the last 3 years that we've been around, we have worked with 145 startups. Actually, this is probably a few days old, so it must have crossed 150 now because of COVID. We've been very, very closely working with startups, institutions. We have had 15 international partnerships in UK, Germany, Estonia, Australia, and many other countries. And we are now focusing on major transformational initiatives. And one of the initiatives which we are working on right now, as we speak, is to build the entire value system for RT-PCR testing in Hyderabad. So while we say that this country today produces 200 RT-PCR kits for COVID testing, most of the raw materials in that are imported. But we do have small startups and small companies in this sector, biotech sector, who are capable. So today we are doing a national initiative together with Bangalore and Delhi to increase and ramp up the capacity of RT-PCR testing from about 200,000 a day to 1 million a day. That's the kind of transformational activities we are focusing on, also in agriculture, also in biotech in general. Next. So when COVID hit us, the state asked RICH to be the nodal agency to ensure that whatever the state needs will get. So we also have Ravi Narayan, who just spoke, also is a part of the team. We have a series of experts of doctors, public health researchers, VCs, medtechs, academicians, etc., who are all reviewing, because we have reached out to over 100 startups and young companies in this last 3 months to see who can support the government initiatives. Some of these are apps for monitoring, for contact tracing and things like that. Some of these are but some of these are also creation of RT-PCR kits, of other kits, of PPE, things of ventilators and every single thing. Right now, we are working with things for ultraviolet, eradication, so that we can sanitize PPE kits and reuse them and so on. So there's an enormous amount of work happening, and right as we speak, every week, the technology group of, the COVID group of Telangana works actively together to bring the best possible technology available today to the state. Next. So as I said, of those things, 8 startups in actually testing development, 40 plus startups in apps and 5 in PP, etc., have all been put together. And every day we are in. So if you have anything in any of these and you think you're market ready, please get in touch with us and we will help you access the markets. We are working with ACT, which is Action COVID Team, where VCs have put together a fund of 100 crores, and they are actually giving it as grants and not as investments. So there is a lot happening together, and this is what building an ecosystem is all about. Ecosystem building means we must bring all possible players, from data scientists to biotechs to manufacturers to testing experts to consultants to researchers, so that we are able to build a capability. Now, as we get into some of these things, we are also going to require things to make. And I'm sure Sudhir will talk about some of those things. So we are also going to need talent. And I'm sure Shrikant will talk about some of those talent. So that is what building the whole ecosystem in Hyderabad is all about. I'm delighted that already at this earlier stage, we are doing extremely well in terms of talent. We are doing reasonably well in terms of funding. So the 2 most difficult building blocks of building an ecosystem, we have already seen to have done extremely well. The ones in which we still need to is market, which is all right, that will take, and in finding a few large success stories, because many of these rankings depend on a few large success stories. I'm sure that will happen. So, but the way we are building it from grassroots, building it from rural ecosystems, building it to social ecosystems, that is what makes me very, very excited about the Telangana ecosystem. Thank you.
Thanks, Ajit. Thanks, Ajit. We'll come back to you, Ajit. We have a lot of questions from the audience, and I personally have a few questions for you as well, building on the topic that you have covered. But I would like to introduce the third panelist that we have today, Mr. Shrikant Sinha. Shrikant has been the CEO of NASCOM Foundation. He currently, as part of the innovation ecosystem of Telangana, heads the task. He is a firm believer of Tech for Good initiative and always been promoting grassroots innovation and is an advocate of inclusive India. So now I'd like to request Shrikant to walk us through what Task has been doing during this time and way forward for us.
Thank you very much, Manish. I hope you're able to hear me. Ravi, thanks for organizing this and including Task as part of it. And Ajit, thank you very much. Work done by Rich speaks for itself. And thank you for talking about the talent. Task was a unique initiative initiated by the Honorable Minister and the Chief Minister in 2014, when the bifurcation of the states were happening, looking at the youth over here and their potential, educated youth, but not getting enough jobs. And that's where Task was created, to enhance the employability of the youth. We work basically in 3 areas. The first is education, second is employability, and third is entrepreneurship. And that's how we become The third pillar is actually what makes us included into the task, into the Telangana ecosystem itself, innovation ecosystem itself. In education, we look at the academic curriculum and try to identify the gaps between what the industry requires and what the academic institutions are providing, be it technical, be it non-technical. We look at those gaps and run programs so that we are able to plug those gaps. Moving towards employability, we look at organizational impact skills, we look at industry impact skills, as well as personal impact skills, which are imparted along with, we do a lot of job fairs, etc. But that doesn't mean that we are only interested in creating a nation of job seekers. While We Hub, T Hub, and Rich, etc., are actually creating innovators and entrepreneurs, we look at creating an entrepreneurial mindset itself, and that's where we look at entrepreneurship in a big way. If we look at it, can I go to the previous slide itself, please? Yeah, thank you very much, Manish. I will tell you when to change. We have 676 colleges registered with us as of date, which includes about 259 technical institutions. And apart from that, there are other colleges also. All government degree and polytechnic colleges are also part of our ecosystem. We work with about 40 skilling partners, which are technology and non-technology skilling partners with whom we work very closely. And they help our students get skilled and trained. We also do faculty development program because we work in a very lean and thin model where we conduct faculty development programs and faculty further conduct those programs for all the students in the colleges, etc. We have done a lot of placement drives and got good amount of placements. In fact, probably out of the 25 to 30,000 students being placed in the IT industry every year, a majority, about 60 to 70%, would be task registered students themselves and task registered colleges from where these kids are coming. Please, next slide. Next slide, please, Manish. Manish, can we move to the next slide?
Yes, Shrikant, Sandhya is actually doing the presentations. She is having trouble.
Okay. So, no worries. In that case, I'll continue to probably speak about it if that's okay with everyone. Just let me see what the nice slide was. Anyway, we'll talk in general. So in terms of I want to use the same slides that you have in your deck, and just give me a minute, please. Just give me 30 seconds more. Because the slides that were sent by me were a lot many more, so I don't know which one you have taken. All right. So anyway, as I was mentioning that, so we are working with all these technology partners, etc. We have got a lot of companies, as I said, right from the Googles of the world to Adobe to ServiceNow, and recently we've also partnered with RPA for RPA along with Automation Anywhere as well as UiPath to bring in the latest and skill our students so that they can contribute to any ecosystem, be it the ecosystem which is more towards creating job opportunities. Thank you very much. I think we have spoken most about it, but probably what I'd like to talk about over here is, as part of entrepreneurship, apart from the mindset that we are trying to develop, we also conduct a lot of hackathons. We also run a program in collaboration with ISB called STP, which I'll refer to in a minute. And also we work with HICIA towards the maker labs, etc. One of our things is this year we are also trying to see how we can move to rural innovators, given the fact that now using online we can reach out to multiple places. Next slide, please. This is just the growth story. I think I will not go into too much details about this, just to help you understand that today we are catering to about 1,80,000 plus students who are there, or pass outs who are there. 57,000 students are currently in the colleges itself, and about 130,000 students have already passed out out of our colleges. Next slide, please. Talking about the innovation ecosystem, as I said, that we are running a technology entrepreneurship program with in collaboration with ISB, and we are seeing at how we could scale it up. This program was a unique program and started in 2014 itself, and more than 2,000 plus people have undergone this program. We started with the 2 years program and then brought it down to a 1 year program. Seeing the interest of the students, this is helping these people take, understand what the innovation is all about, create entrepreneurial, look at how design thinking works, right to an MVP is what they are able to create. There have been 6 very good startups out of this, and probably Josh is what I would like to talk about, which is the creation of an online helmet, air-conditioned helmet, sorry, which is created as part of this program itself. So this is in a nutshell about Task, and of course, I can continue to talk for the next 1 hour on Task, but in interest of time, I'll probably answer questions later on. Thanks, Manish. Over to you.
Thanks, Shrikant. Apologies for the technical glitch that we had. Now I would like to invite our next panelist, Mr. Sujay Karampuri, to talk about TWorks. To briefly introduce Sujay, Sujay is the Director of Electronics with Department of IT. He is also the Managing Director of Telangana Fiber Grid Corporation, and of course he is the head of TWorks. Prior to working with us, Sujay was the CEO and founder of the Sloka Telecom, a startup which was regarded by NASSCOM as the most innovative startup in 2008. So over to you, Sujay, to hear more about what TWorks has been doing, the wonderful story behind this picture that we have.
Hi everyone, can you hear me?
Yes, Sujay.
Okay, I'm doing this with the headphones for the first time. So thanks a lot for the introduction. I think you can see the slides. See, that is the unit that is about to come up close to IKEA, close to T-Hub Phase 2. I think once the unit is up, I think we can see much more action. But right now we are already doing some of the preliminary work, I have to say. So the idea behind TWorks is that there should be a platform where anybody who wants to develop or create a product should be able to do it, especially when it comes to mechanical hardware prototyping. Not necessarily like pure software, because that can be done anywhere. So we wanted to create a platform, and the idea is to create and celebrate this culture. Many countries have it, where people tinker and make products, and sometimes they get into the market, but sometimes it is just to showcase. So that was the whole idea, and I think what we're doing is phase 0 is what we call it, because the unit, when the unit is up, the real unit, then it would be phase 1. But right now we work out of a facility in Begumpet, and that's where we have been doing. We can go to the next slide. So what we have been doing and what we will be doing is what this shows. So basically, once the unit is up, we will be giving passes to people so that they can come in and use the equipment. That's our idea. Colleges, institutions, startups, businesses, hobbyists, anybody could come in and start using this equipment. And then a lot of workshops related to this. So for example, somebody wants to know how to use a 3D printer. so they could go through a workshop. Somebody wants to just convert a drawing into a prototype on using AutoCAD, and then get it into CNC machine, get it milled, then that's a workshop. Somebody wants to create a PCV, that's a workshop. Somebody wants to build a drone, that's a workshop, and so on. And as part of that, there is a skilling required. So for example, you can go take a two-week course to be able to use an advanced CNC machine, or a 1-week course to use a 3D printer, and so on. So that's how we are going to use the equipment for skilling, and where we partner with Task on this. So a lot of activities you can see, community related. We have been working with TSIC also on it, wherein TSIC identifies some of the rural innovators, and their product might be very rudimentary. They come in, and at TWorks they can convert that product into something that they can go to market. We also allow, if you go back a bit on the slide, so on scaling as well. So for example, somebody creates a product, but it's a rudimentary product, which a prototype which may not have the necessary essentials to take it for mass manufacturing. So our team actually helps them to design it in such a way that they can take it for mass manufacturing. And in certain cases, we actually introduce them to a large scale manufacturer so that they can tie up and take it to the market. Okay, you can go to the next slide. So yeah, next slide. Okay. So what happened is that COVID came, and then we had to spring into action at phase 0 itself. So for example, the first one is the aerosol box that we distributed to 2 or 3 manufacturers, who in turn made about 200 to 300 boxes and sent it to various hospitals so far. So this allows the doctor to work with a COVID patient and minimize the the contact. And this design actually was done by a Taiwanese designer, but somebody had to take the design and actually make it happen, and that's what we did. And we are also working with some 2 or 3 startups on how to create this N95 mask using nano material. And the third one is a mechanical ventilator, which is currently showcased, and we are working very closely with NIMS doctors to trial it on the real patients. I think that's scheduled next week. We have come far on this. Actually, that was a real showcase of how we want to do it at TWorks. It's a collaborative environment that we created, wherein about 20 to 30 startups of Hyderabad came and actually sat during the lockdown period and worked at TWorks daily, including the holidays. And about few corporates like Qualcomm, Honeywell, GE, and few other companies also contributed with their engineers and with their product management team on coming on phone calls. And then we regularly worked with the NIMS director and the HOD to make sure that what we are preparing or making is in line with what they want. And then, a few other things like smart sanitizer, which a startup wanted. So if you go to the next slide. Oh, that's pretty much what we have been doing. So there are a couple of examples that we have had where we worked with one of the startups from T-Hub, where it's called Blue Semi, I think. What they were doing was they were creating a thermal scanner, but somebody had to actually work on the design and customize it, and then it was taken to the Indian Railways through another agency, and they showcased it to the railways agents. So this is what we've been doing. We've been building planes for some people. We're building. We also worked with one drones company to for the afforestation program, where the seeds are planted, thrown at different distances, so that you can make an effective afforestation program. So this is what we've been doing. Our idea is to scale this up, work with more and more innovators and startups and investors. So in certain cases, what we do is, for example, in case of ventilator, we actually brought a manufacturer, the Micromax, and tied up the manufacturer with the product, handheld the manufacturer to understand what we're doing, and then use the manufacturing experience to the team so that they design the product and create parts in such a way that a manufacturer can actually do it on a volume basis. So this is what we've been doing. For example, we worked with one company which was creating signboards on the taxis, but they didn't have the aerodynamic design, so it was creating a lot of drag. So we changed it, and we work with a lot of e-vehicle companies also to help them design solve a design problem. So that's what we've been doing. We have a lot of equipment right now which we use, and a lot of talent pool also available. So there are a lot of designers with us in mechanical, chemical, plastic, electromechanical, then electronics, firmware, software, some of them as well. So this is what we've been doing. We worked on the afforestation program with Rich, and also right now we are helping some of the guys identified by TSIAC, rural innovators, to actually convert their rudimentary prototype into a commercial product. So this is what T-Works has been doing.
Thanks, Sujay. Thank you for briefing us about the work that T-Works has been doing. So basically, to the audience, this brings end to the round of introductions about the organizations that are part of the innovation ecosystem, at least the ones that are represented today. Now we would move on to the part where we get the panelists to shed their own thoughts on certain questions that we have accumulated from the people who have shown interest to participate here. And I would like to request the audience also to keep posting questions, also with the name of the panelists that they would like to respond to those questions. But before, while you keep doing that, let me open up the floor and ask the first question to Ravi. So Ravi, when I first saw the topic of the webinar, Emerging Telangana, Way Forward for the Innovation Ecosystem, it was the right mix of the present continuous tense, that is emerging Telangana, which means that something is happening right now, and then there was a futuristic aspect in way forward for the innovation ecosystem. So I'm trying to understand here, and this is very valid for the whole of the audience as well, how exactly is Telangana emerging, and what is this Telangana's emergence destined for?
Thanks for the question, Manish. I think we had budgeted about 20 minutes for doing the introduction, but the amount of work that is going on amongst each one of us in our organizations is so much that you're just seeing the tip of the iceberg. So you'll see that so much of the other work that we have not talked about, or we are in the process of doing today, will actually create much more and much larger impact going forward. I think we just had the initial go at certain initiatives, made certain things happen, but it was not something that we did on a very organic basis. We actually, because of the leadership that we have with Yetiar Garu and others, that we have the ability to now create the entire infrastructure from the get-go. And each one of them has found their own feet, they have found their direction, they have their understanding of how they can contribute. I think this is when the fun really begins. And therefore, I feel that while there is a lot to talk about even today, but this is only the beginning.
That's just wonderful. In fact, Ajit, if I may ask you, so for example, during this pandemic, what has happened is there have been so many learnings. And do you feel there is any special attribute or lesson that we should actually attribute to this pandemic, that had it not been for this pandemic, we would never have learned that lesson as an innovation ecosystem of Telangana?
Okay, so but actually even before the pandemic started, So if I just continue with what Ravi talked about, our innovation ecosystem, and when we talk of emerging, we are using technology as a primary driver for creating two things. One is business impact, but other is also societal impact. And societal impact on the community everywhere, but specifically on the rural, right? So that is where the emergent thing comes in. And when you look at those kind of problems, before COVID hit, dengue was still a very big problem for us. Right? So bringing together research institutions, bringing together drone suppliers, bringing together IoT device manufacturers, bringing together people who understand AI, ML, and therefore can do predictive analysis, bringing together public health people who will help us, bringing together people who can actually remove water hyacinth and convert it into something useful, bringing to people together societal people who will actually help keep those lakes rich. All these were already being thought of and done. But getting people to collaborate was a tough challenge. What COVID has done is has made this entire thing, everyone has suddenly realized, man, we better collaborate with each other. And now the atmosphere for collaboration and atmosphere for realizing that everything is working. So right now, as I mentioned to you very briefly, the RT-PCR kits, everything is imported. And most of those imports are sometimes of highly questionable quality. But in Hyderabad, we have a large number of small biotech manufacturers who are all capable of doing these things. How do we build up their capability? So that's where the research institutions like CCMB come in. How do we build up their capacity for growth? That's where some of us like Rich come in. How do we give them market access? That's where the state government comes in. Right? So we are developing this entire ecosystem so that, we as a state, and we'll also do this in Bangalore and in Delhi, so that as a country, we have become completely self-sufficient. And all this ability to move this whole thing quickly, fast, and collaboratively would not have happened without.
Yeah. So Ajit, you also touched upon a little bit on the research aspect of it. Suddenly you see people getting interested in reading the tech aspect of the pandemic, of the vaccine, and so on and so forth. So suddenly there is an awakening in the country about knowing about the technical details, the research aspect of it. Do you think this change is permanent going forward? Are we, as part of innovation ecosystem, doing enough, or what are the plans to make sure that we continue to have research aspect glued to our innovation ecosystem?
So in the state, I think we have always been very keen. So, when we have one big initiative called the Pharma City. Correct? We recognize that if Pharma City has to become successful, it must have with it an outstanding educational and research institution attached to it. So we have, as a state, when Rich was started, what was the whole? The whole idea was to use the research capability for industry and societal use. Correct? Now what is happening is the central government has also become very active in this. In fact, I am on one of the teams which is developing the science, technology and innovation policy of the country. So STIP 2020 will come out later this year. And one of the things that is coming very clear is that we have to give a lot more importance and resources to research. Some of the things that we have been doing together with CCMB and IICT earlier was to encourage more. Sujay has done a great job of getting young people to come and see the facilities at TWX. Why can't IICT and CCMB do something similar, learn from Sujay and others and say, hey, bring young children there. Unless you excite young children about science careers, unless there are adequately good and useful science careers, no change will happen. So there is a big distinct happening. I'm personally confident that this change will be long-term and permanent.
Sure. Thanks, Ajit. I think, in fact, you mentioned that how the TWorks facility has become an epicenter for people to come, have a hands-on experience, not only at the facility, but the machinery. So, Sujay, my question to you would be that prototyping has always been an important aspect of the innovation ecosystem, and it requires people to come together, work in a close huddle, and so on. But this pandemic has disrupted that way of working together. So what do you feel the plans are going ahead, and what do you feel that we have done to tackle this sort of limitations on huddling together for prototyping?
Actually, we had a vision. Actually, our mantra at TWorks is collaborate, collaborate, collaborate. We use the word 3 times to push this word collaborate, because that is the key. That's what Ajit was talking about. If you keep working in silos, what happens is over a period of time, you can only go and push the barrier of innovation only to a certain extent. After that, you need to bring all the elements together. I mean, it's the same with any product making company or anything. You can't have just at one team working in silos. It never works. So what happened to us at TWorks with the COVID was a very funny thing. Actually, we were thinking that this is what we wanted to propose, but it naturally happened. During the lockdown, we were one of the very few facilities which was operating, and this is where the government comes in. We use the government to make sure that our team could come to TWorks. Not only our team, but all the guys and all the team, all the other startups, including Qualcomms and everybody. They could all come to TWorks and work. And I'll give you one example where government can do wonders if they do things right. For example, we had some parts that were stuck with the customs, and lockdown. Nobody wants to open these, but because you are part of the government, you could actually get a police officer to go to the store, open the store, and get our parts out, because it's an emergency. But if you think about how Qualcomm reacted and Honeywell reacted, GE reacted, is also very nice. They actually allowed their engineers to work on our premises, on their payroll, actually, for so many weeks. And they, by the way, even now they are continue to send their engineers, even though the lockdown is lifted. So, it's the same with so many other elements, like either it's NIMS doctors who would always come on the phone call. So this pandemic has helped us to understand and realize the power of collaboration. My only wish is that this continues, that it's not just for pandemic that we collaborate, but we continue to collaborate. And I think there's a lot more that can be done, and if we do it on a very sustained basis, when it comes to medical equipment, when it comes to these what Ajit was talking about, instead of reacting to it now and then lose interest, I think we should keep on doing this for next many years, wherein we bring this capability within near and around. And that way it not only allows engineers to do something great, but I think it creates entrepreneurs, it creates employment, and it creates economy. So I think it has got so many elements, and I think as a government we realize the importance of this, and I think this is what we're trying to do. I think these are our baby steps, but maybe 5 years from now, if we institutionalize this collaboration, I think maybe we'll see amazing results.
So yeah, I think so. Collaborate, collaborate, collaborate is going to be the mantra for us, and I think it has been the mantra for us. Some of the questions from the attendees have been about the job seeker aspect, or so much so they are. I mean, we can't ignore them. We can't afford to ignore them. So the question for Shrikant Garu from them is that, is there gonna be a fundamental shift in the requirement that the job providers are going to look for after the pandemic ends or the economy picks up? And if that's going to be, are we prepared from task side? Are we telling it out to the people that these are the kind of skills that employers are going to look for once the pandemic hits off and goes off and then the economy picks up?
Sure, Manish, thank you. It's very interesting, and this is a very, very good question, because most of our students are opening up the TV or the papers and seeing that this plant was shut down, their jobs have been lost, and so on and so forth. So unfortunately, TASK has not been doing any of the interesting work that Ajit ji or Sujay Garu is doing, which is creating things. But what we have been doing on the sidelines is helping our youth come out of that negative mindset. So we have been running regular webinars, starting, in fact, we had our 5th webinar yesterday. We go industry by industry and talk about expectations of a particular industry post-COVID, right? And that's where we have an expert panel sitting down there, which actually help our students understand. And these are the 3rd year and 4th year students who are there, the TPOs, the college principals. So essentially helping the education system, which is going to come out in the next 2 years, understand what are the requirements. In fact, we were very happy that we had our electronics manufacturing webinar yesterday, expectations of the electronics manufacturing industry yesterday, and Sujay Garu was also a part of it, where so we have had on IT, we have had on aerospace, we have had on life sciences and pharma, we have had it on manufacturing, and of course electronics manufacturing. Next one is going to be on BFSI. A couple of things which are coming out very clearly is that everywhere IR 4.0 has been accelerated thanks to the pandemic. As a result of which, a lot of automation, a lot of machine learning, AI, etc., will be required now in all job roles. Earlier, we were just talking about jobs on the cusp. Now, everything is going to accelerate in that fashion. Second thing, which is very clearly coming out, and that is being communicated through these webinars to the youth of Telangana, is that you need to also focus on your fundamentals, but be adaptable, be understand the 21st century skills, which is communication, teamwork, interpretation of data, critical thinking and problem solving skills, etc. So very clearly this message is coming all across, be it aerospace, be it everywhere. People are talking about automation and how technology is going to impact, be it manufacturing or anything else. Data science is being looked at by a lot of organizations which are into the pharma and life sciences space. So everywhere the message is coming out very clearly. So what our endeavor now is to prepare people whenever that particular industry comes up. But having said that, I was very, very happy to learn from all the panelists through all these 5 webinars so far, is that even now during this lockdown and the pandemic kind of a situation, jobs are available in the market, right? We have a lot of people being required in the manufacturing industry. Logistics, of course, is definitely a lot of people are required for it. But manufacturing today is also shaping up as a competition to IT. IT cannot give our youth all the jobs. A lot of people are looking at other industries also. And of course, we would not end these webinar series without doing one on entrepreneurship also, because we feel that we need to be a state and a nation of job givers also. Micropreneurs, solopreneurs also are needed. Thank you.
So Manish, if I can just add into that, I think we are grossly over worried and overestimating the job loss situation. And we are giving no thought whatsoever to the fact that because the global supply chains are breaking, a large country like India is going to have to rebuild those things internally within the country. And in areas like life sciences and in general manufacturing, a lot more production and manufacturing will shift back to India, and that will not take away the service jobs, because the service jobs will now be catering to these new industries. So I think there will be a short term, maybe 6 months to a year, till people figure out, and people are still worried about I lost 3 months of profit, I need to save money. Once that mindset shifts, I think in 6 months or so, we will start seeing growth coming back. The other thing is, in countries like US and so on, even retail sales are already back to 80% of what they were pre-COVID. So human behavior doesn't change. I think once we learn to live with this, right now we are in a fear psychosis. Once we learn to live with this, a lot better things will start happening.
That's very, very interesting, Ajit. I think, in fact, that brings me to like the next thought that I was having, that if we have to come out of this fear psychosis that you're mentioning, it has to be on certain pillars. If the innovation economy of Telangana has to emerge, it has to happen on certain pillars. So what do you feel are going to be those pillars so that the buildings takes up, the momentum picks up for the innovation economy? And then I'd like to
I,
ask Ravi as well to throw some light on the same question.
so you want Ravi to go first or me to go first?
Please go ahead, Ajit.
Ajit, I would like to hear you first.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think, and this is something we have. It so happens that the three of us have been talking about this for some time, right? What has started in Hyderabad needs to now percolate across the state. So one big this thing is that our innovation, our ways of doing things have to percolate and have to now become all encompassing to us. In areas like life sciences, for example, a large number of jobs are going to spring up as we shift from one large factory doing everything and creating all the supply chains to having a relatively distributed manufacturing capability. We are going to require manufacturing capability. The third thing is that nowhere are we talking about, having the kind of facilities that we get used to in Hyderabad all across. So some of the work that you and Ravi have been doing, right, which is to spread innovation, all that is going to nurture them. Those are the building blocks. How do we use technology to widen our look from only looking at global big, unicorn kind of manufacturing to a large number of units which manufacture enough things to create enough capability and work across the farming sector, across the rural economy, rural retail, across food and health, and so on and so forth. So I think those are going to be the big building blocks.
So I was reflecting on Sujay's comment about how wonderfully we are collaborating now, faced with the pandemic. And if the pandemic goes away, would we continue to collaborate the way the way we have been doing so far in the last few months? I think if I take a look at that, obviously we don't want the pandemic to be around to make us collaborate, but at the same time, it's a common enemy. I think it's something that gave us a common purpose and gave us the direction that we needed to come together to collaborate and so on and so forth. I think that is the fundamental of any innovation economy for us. We talk about, and an innovation economy is a new thing that we are coining, right? I mean, we have the ability to do that because we can stand on the work that we have done, and we can see a little farther away. So the usual thing would be, startup ecosystem, people talk about it, or innovation, and the next level is the innovation ecosystem. Now we're talking about an innovation economy. And I feel, an innovation economy is something that all of us are, in the process of putting together. It is not just to say, hey, we have innovation, look at task, look at T-Works. That's all the engines of that economy. It's the ability for us to very clearly state the kind of entrepreneurship that we have unleashed, the kind of innovation that we have unleashed. How many jobs have we created? How many new, investors have we, attracted to this? What is the GDP, growth because of the work that can be attributed to innovation? I mean, these are the kinds of things that we can start, articulating and even capturing, because now we have begun to see some of these works, and most of us are driven by very quantifiable, measurable kind of outcomes that we have to drive. These are some things that are happening, and these are happening at a much more larger place than what each individual of each one of us can actually influence. I think we are influencing something that is fundamental, but you will see the kind of impact at a much higher level. So I think that those are the ways in which we can actually create this state as the place where people want to come to innovate, be it startups, be it innovators, be it corporations from all across the world. They say, if you want to innovate, you come to Telangana.
That's just simply nice to hear. So Ravi, just a follow question. So when this innovation building has to pick up, the innovation economy has to be defined, where is the place for tier 2 towns and tier 3 towns here? What role they have to play, and what do you feel is their role gonna be in the innovation economy or the innovation ecosystem of Telangana?
Yeah, I think most of the work that we have done so far has been tried and tested in Hyderabad. I think we have the semblance of some initial successes, and we are looking at mini T works in some of the tier 2, tier 3 cities. We're looking at hub and spoke model to really take some of the learnings and go back there, because I think the fundamental premise in my mind is that if you looked at the economy of India, prior to the British coming in, for example, each of these villages were self-sufficient units. They had the ability to create, great amount of economic activity on their own. They did not need to be pushed by some other place, or the incentives had to come, or they were not completely agrarian by themselves. All these things happened over a period of time. The fundamental nature of how these units were self-sufficient and ability to be accretive to the larger economy was, I think, has gone missing for a while. Our ability to actually inject that back at that grassroots level, at that level, is one of the reasons I think we can actually create something much more fundamentally sound and something that is much larger than what we have just started with today.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Avi. So I think in the interest of time, we will start taking questions that have come from the audience. So we have quite many questions. And in fact, some of the questions I feel were already answered by the panelists. So we have one question from Mr. Rajat Chandra, and he would like to ask Ajit that the telemedicine market has seen growth in the recent past. What are the opportunities for startups to innovate in this field, and what do investors look for such solutions? Ajit, you are muted. Let me just unmute you.
Okay, I think so. Thank you. So I think the big problem for telemedicine was regulatory, really, right? So I think right now there are already a large number of players in the telemedicine field, and I think there are so many apps now available and there are some big players, including some seriously big funders who are coming out with a nationwide platform where you can practically reach out to the doctor of your choice to get the kind of help you need. So this is going to be a huge big, depending on the funding possibilities that you have and the scale you have. I think the big issue is still going to be, for the next few years, the absence of smartphones in the rural economy. And can we therefore use IVR kind of technologies for telemedicine in the rural areas is going to be the big thing. But it is already filled with. I think this is a fairly crowded marketplace, and I think there are. I mean, at least we have seen, I don't know how many, 20, 30, 40 startups here in Hyderabad alone, and many of them are working with many state governments. What is also happening is here there is a big first mover advantage. So if you are doing a delta improvement over the existing, no government is going to change their application. They're already got used to it. They're working with something. So unless you can come up with something that is so radically different that it makes a big difference, you're going to face some great challenges in a market entry.
Manish, could I add to that? Yep. So
Sure.
during this pharma and that there was one of the examples that came up with the pandemic, with the this happening and quarantine happening, right? Gone are the days when you would be locked in a room and someone would keep, the food outside and you would open and have it. This also threw up a potential opportunity for people because you needed assisted quarantine. You needed to be checked for your temperature every 2 hours, and everything had to be done in particular manner, right? A lot of telemedicine companies immediately jumped on that opportunity, and actually they were able to help these people who are quarantined to get all these facilities through their smartphones.
All right. So I think, yeah, that pretty much sums the answer to the response. Hope it's satisfying to the person who has asked it. So what I'll do now is take a 1 minute break while Sandhya will put a link to the feedback form in the chat box. I will request all the audience to kindly respond. It only makes us do the webinar better and present to you what's desired by you. So we'll just, Sandhya, I request you to please put the question in the feedback form in the chat box, and we'll wait for 1 minute for the audience to fill the form. And then we'll take a couple of questions after that. We have a question from Mr. Sanai, and this is for Sujay. Mr. Sanai asked that how would Telangana industries react to call for automation and adoption to latest technologies post-COVID? And I'd request Sujay to respond to this question.
Yeah, I really don't know how to answer this, to be honest. Call for automation, see, it's a global phenomena. I mean, every industry is going through automation, and depending on which industry it is and which country it is, the automation depends on various factors, the degree of automation. So in those countries where the labor is too expensive, definitely those industries tend to automate their processes much better. And also those industries which require that kind of precision tend to go and automate themselves. But having said that, it's never one direction. That you cannot ever say that every industry in every country is going to automate in the same amount. It's not going to happen. So you'll always have access to certain industry where the manpower is required, and that's what, if you have talent pool available, then those are the industries that you should pick, like food processing, for example. I'll just talk about electronics itself. For example, large TVs, very big TVs, they require certain degree of automation because the panels are very big. So no matter what, the human being cannot do it. But these earphones, even today, they're all done by hand across the world. So automation is an opportunity in one way, because then automation requires more people making automated devices. So somebody, pick and place machines, somebody has to build this. So some countries have gone into that more. So wherein they build or machines which create those automatic machines. For example, warehousing. There is a company in India which creates these robots for the warehouses like Flipkart and Amazon, so that a box can be picked and put and then sent for shipping. So it's just an opportunity, according to me. So I really don't know how the question was put, but I just gave a very vague answer, I guess.
Sure, sure. I think we have one question for the entire panel, but I would request Shrikant Garu to in fact take a go on this question. So Mr. Arun had asked that should only commercially viable outcomes be considered as innovation, or it should be more general? Shrikant Garu.
Okay, so I'm wearing my old hat of the development sector and then answering it. I think even if you look at the social entrepreneurs also, if you look at it, they are also viable, right? The profit margins may not be that high, but if you're able to come up with a product which is something which solves a problem, preferably a societal problem, if it is frugal, affordable, and accessible, then I think whatever you're developing would be a success, right? So in my mind, success is helping change lives of other people, right? And today, if you look at COVID, right, Trump lost 23% of his entire value itself due to this COVID, right? So instead of that, if you look at success as changing people's life, then I think your life will become more meaningful. That's my point of view, by the way.
I think Mr. Arun would have his answer. I think so. So, in the interest of time, we will not take any more questions, and in fact, close the session on two notes. One is that I would like to hear each one of the panelists respond to two prompts. One is that what is that one big dream that all of you individually see for the innovation ecosystem of Telangana? And I would like Ravi to take, and then probably we'll take turns, everyone. So, Ravi, what is that one big dream you see for the innovation ecosystem?
Yeah, I think we talked about this already. I think it's a great place to be where we are today. We have, as we say in the startup world, we have finished the product market fit stage. I think we have a set of products that are working very well for the market that's already available, and the market has just expanded exponentially in front of us. So if we have the ability now to execute very well and really create Telangana as a model state or a model for the rest of India and the rest of the world, I think we have something phenomenal that we can achieve together.
Ajit.
Sir, did you say me?
Yeah.
Manish?
Yes, Ajit. I would request you to tell one big dream that you have. Yes.
So I will carry on with what I started originally, and Sujay put it very nicely. I think my one dream is that the collaboration continues. If the collaboration, everything else is in place. Now it's up each one of us as individuals and say, no, we are going to be part of this. And also when we look at that, one of the bad things, and as a business school professor, or at least dean, I feel ashamed of this. We have talked far too much on only profit maximization. We have to shift our mindset to societal maximization and profit optimization. So That's my second dream, is that I hope we can get our heads around that, so that really genuinely societally important innovations get the support they need.
I'm sure you'll be able to do, Ajit, with your energy and guidance. Sujay, would you like to concur with that? The one big dream that you have for our ecosystem?
Yeah. So am I unmuted? Can I speak now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, yes,
So
sure.
first, I want to address the question that was asked earlier. See, Ajit said, it's not just profit, but also societal impact. Now I'll take it one step further. See, a young kid in a school cannot go to class and say, I'm learning matrices. Where will I get money out of this? See, it's a, we are attaching too much of importance to sometimes money and other things. I think sometimes you just have to innovate for the sake of innovation. That's the first step. I'm not saying that's a final step, but that's the first step. If you're not even willing to experiment and you impose a constraint on yourself saying, oh, I'm going to design, but it has to be commercially viable, then you are so heavily constrained that probably you'll not even pick up a pen and start designing. So I think one of the biggest things that we need to do and inculcate amongst our own kids, as parents, as teachers to students, and as us into entrepreneurs, is that they need to experiment, and failure is okay, and failure should be celebrated. And maybe I want us as a state one day to say and put 4 entrepreneurs on the stage and say, here are the 4 big failures. They tried against all odds but failed, but so what? Let's celebrate this. I think that is one thing that I'm really trying to instill in my own team as well, and I hope this gets across. Now, coming to the dream, I think I concur with Ajit. I think if ever we continue this collaboration and instill this and institutionalize this so that we don't have to urge people, but it comes naturally, I think that would be a greatest achievement if this state can do it. Collaboration, I think, has to now go beyond. So, for example, there are a lot of multinational companies which work in their own domains, but the engineers are very passionate. We need to knock on their doors, bring them out, and ask them to collaborate with us. There are a lot of manufacturers. We need to collaborate with them. So, like research groups. So, I think we need to keep on extending this more and more and bring more people into this ambit. And I think whether we like it or not, the magic is going to happen. So, I think that is my dream, I hope.
Shrikant Garu?
Definitely continuing with the theme of collaboration itself. Collaboration, but for what? Collaboration for ensuring that entrepreneurship moves out of the cities and goes to the tier 2 and tier 3 towns and villages, as Ravi Garu also said and Ajit Garu also said. I think that is what is going to actually change things. Just to take an example, a young girl in Telangana created a lemon sorter, right? And it was not technology that she had used or power. She used the power of gravity. What she did was tied 2 sticks on one end, creating a wedge in between, so that she would she kept 3 utensils under at different distances and kept it inclined over a bucket, right? All she did was keep the lemons on top of it, and depending on the size of the lemon, they would drop into the various containers itself. Right now, that is the kind of innovation that we want to bring. It has to change lives of people. If we are able to bring that kind of rural innovation in home appliances, in helping in farming, in helping getting democratize health for the large population, which is a rural diaspora, I think, which will be very, very important if that can be done. And second dream is, of course, though the statistics talks about less than 7% persons with disabilities, etc. If I look at the increasing aging population of India, I would put it around 15% at least, if we are able to innovate and come up and make more assistive technologies available to these persons with disabilities, and if Telangana is able to show the way to the world for this, because there's a huge demand for this kind of technologies which need to be frugal and accessible. I think that's what my dream for Telangana would be.
Thanks, Shrikant garu. So I think it's innovate, fail, celebrate, collaborate, collaborate, collaborate. So I think on that note, I would like to thank all the panelists and all the attendees who have come to attend this session. I would request the attendees to go on and fill the form, feedback form, so that when the next version comes of similar sessions where we talk about emerging Telangana, where the innovation ecosystem sits together and talks about the work that we are doing together for the entire state and probably showing the way for the country, we can do it more effectively. So on that note, I'd like to thank everyone, thank the panelists, thank the attendees, and thanks to the organizers. Thank you.
Thank you, Manish.
So
Thank
much.
you for a great.
Thank you.
Thank you.